This is also, by the way, it's going to be a slight test because I've got this platform plugged into a different platform which streams it over multiple channels. And so we're going to learn today very quickly how well this RTMP link works. Renee, thank you so much for joining us on Confessions of an Implementer. We've got a bunch to cover today. And you added one thing while we were just having a casual conversation over the last 10 minutes, which I thought was super interesting, and it was immediately relatable to me, which is you said time is like toothpaste. And so what does that even mean?
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. So thank you so much. We were chatting about a conversation literally that I was having with myself a few days ago. And I was brushing my teeth and I was using travel size toothpaste because I'm often on the move and that's kind of what I have close at hand. And I realized there wasn't a lot left. And so I became very intentional about how much toothpaste I put on my toothbrush and made sure that I'd have enough for tomorrow. And I was going to squeeze as much as I possibly could out of this little tiny toothpaste tube. And then I thought to myself, well, kind of like time. As an entrepreneur, you think you've got lots of it, and you tell yourself I'm going to live till like I'm 100, and you carry on. But really, there's a certain amount of good, healthy, free, and whole years that you can do exactly what you want, how you want, and we spend a lot of them dedicated to running our business, and sometimes forget that it is a finite thing. It's not until we look at a, the continuum of time and how long we will be free and healthy and whole that we realize there's not a lot there. And with that type of conversation, I'm able to help a lot of entrepreneurs unlock and take action and move forward towards realizing more what they want out of life and how they want to live their life with a little bit more urgency and rigor, because like a tube of toothpaste, it's not going to last forever. And the more you come into awareness that you don't have an unlimited amount of toothpaste or time, the more likely you'll be as an entrepreneur to do something positive to change your circumstances. Because a lot of us entrepreneurs are enslaved into our circumstances, which we ultimately created. We get attuned to them, accustomed to them, and we just tell ourselves, this is how it is. Or I've got a lot of time, it'll work out, we'll figure it out eventually. But we don't have as much time as we think.
It's so interesting for a variety of reasons, and hits home. My grandfather used to always say, well, he said, kid getting old sucks. That was one thing that always stuck with me. But he also always talked about how fast time goes by. And the older you get, the faster that it seems or it feels like it goes by. And having recently turned 40, I remember, I think I was like 7 years old. I remember being at my mom's 40th surprise birthday party. And that's a really weird thing now to be able to recollect, like when people that have been in my life forever were at this same moment of time and kind of where we're at today. When you think about this notion of the finite of time and being able to accomplish things, how do you approach this from an entrepreneurship standpoint when you think about projects or tasks or things that need to get done? Because there's this notion of like, what is it, like projects fill time, and so if you give yourself a finite amount of time or set a goal, like you can usually accomplish more within that. What's your philosophy there, and what type of tactics do you use in your own life to ensure that you're getting the right things done and you're doing them most efficiently?
Yeah. Well, as entrepreneurs, we are effectively in the business of energy management. And so our craft is how well we manage energy. And there are times in our career that we tend not to do that well. And then others, other periods of time where we kind of find a flow and we manage that resource. All we have is our energy, and time is a good representation of allotment of blocks for which us to be very intentional about how we use that energy. So I think about energy management as the kind of mind, heart, hand alignment, and thinking about the way we think, being intentional about the way we act, and making sure that, as Gina would say, we're putting the love in it. And what I mean by putting the love in it is that it's purposeful. It's aligned with our reason for being, our values, and so forth. So I look for that level of alignment in when I'm managing my energy well in all the things that I do, whether it's work or play. And then I think about then how I'm going to prioritize those activities and efforts that are most important to me and align with my abilities and they connect with my heart. So when I'm doing that, I'm thinking about um, how I can be most effective with my contribution. One thing I struggle with is being realistic with time frames. You know,
Mm.
what is possible and realistic to be accomplished in a given period of time. And often I think I'm going to do all this in 90 days, and I realize, oh, actually, it was more just like step one. However, that's the nuance of learning and evolution. And rather than being down on myself, I say, okay, that wasn't realistic, but this amount of work was done. Progress was made. So when I'm thinking about time and energy management, I'm trying to be realistic. I'm really measuring progress regularly. I'm looking at my growth, and I'm focusing on what's next. There's a lot of things that keep me busy, and busy work, it uses energy, but it doesn't fulfill me. It's not reciprocal when I'm doing busy work. When I'm doing work that is head, heart, hand aligned, impactful, it's a lot easier, but I'm also receiving energy back. So an important thing about energy management I've learned is that I need to also receive. I can give, I can help, I can support, I can use my time and energy, but it's when I'm doing things that I also receive from, like intrinsic rewards, gratification, a positive dopamine kick, then I am uplifted, and then I have more energy. Time is something that is finite. Energy can be infinite. And when we use energy well, if we're not using energy towards things that are head, heart, hand aligned, and we're not taking care of ourselves, energy unfortunately can deplete, as does time. So I feel like just thinking about the relationship between energy management and time has been a really big shift for me. And it starts with me, my self awareness, my conscious intention to be more thoughtful and intentional about how I use my time. You know, there's only one thing that we really control, and it's the way we think. And when we change the way we think, we change the way we behave. And when we change the way we behave, we change the results we get. So I'm not saying there's an absolute answer and I've got it all figured out, but I'm thinking about my thinking, which
Mm.
is changing my behavior, which is changing my outcomes.
You talked a little bit. That's really one of the reasons I was just having a conversation with my daughter a couple days ago. We were driving to school, and I was talking to her about. I just spoken to someone that said our physical reactions to both nervousness and excitement are the same exact thing. And so being able to get into our own brains and trick or convince ourselves that what we're feeling right now is not nervousness. What we're feeling is excited about this opportunity. And she said, it threw us into this loop because she said, well, how can you trick your own brain if you are your own brain? Like, how do you tell your brain something where your brain is also the one that's telling you it's something else? I don't know if you want to go down that path or not, but we got into like this 15-minute like paradoxical conversation of like, well, how do you tell your brain who's telling you something else that this is not true or this is true?
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that we're having these conversations is really powerful and unlocking, and there are no real absolute answers here. A lot of curiosity and discovery is important. What I've noticed is that I'm very aware of the two hemispheres of my brain, and that duality or dichotomy often um, is really helpful because I can lean when I'm too much in one side of the brain, I can come into the other side, and I really feel like we have that diametric ability as humans, unlike any other animal, and it's a gift and a talent that we often don't use. We can shift. We're like shapeshifters. We can shift. We can be in conceptual or tactical. We can be here. We can be now. We can be in the past. We can be in one side of the brain or the other side. We can be in, they say above the line, below the line, below the line in fear and above the line in abundance. The work around positive intelligence was really helpful for me to think about how much of my time, my brain is in positive mind space versus negative, the saboteurs versus the sage parts of my brain. And the more I played with that, the more I realized that I am in control. And the work that I've learned about as an EOS implementer has got me also thinking about the in and the on. Am I in my thoughts, or am I working on or thinking about my thoughts on the outside? We have the ability to do both. I call that self-awareness, where you can be in the moment and experiencing something, but also observing yourself. And I can speak to myself and say, hey, Renee, this is your pattern, and no judgment here, but we can see now that this is not working. You can shift now, shift later, you choose, but you can actually talk to yourself when you actually practice energy management. And it's the primal ability of us humans that I feel needs to be awakened, because so much of our attention is going outbound. And if we can just bring 25% of that back in and pay attention to our thoughts and our behaviors and realize that we're in control of a lot more than we think, I think more people will feel empowered, they'll be more regulated, and they'll be able to show up with more capacity to contribute. I believe all people are doing their best. And though it would be nice if some people were able to contribute in a more positive way more of the time, and me myself, I'd love to be doing a lot more. It really comes back to capacity. And the number one gift we can give people in terms of their ability to create more capacity, to connect and to contribute, is through energy management.
And when you talk, one thing that's really interesting about this is I literally just did a deep dive into positive intelligence last week, and I had a conversation with Mark Taylor, who's a Master Visage chair out of New York City, and we talked all about this. And this was brand new to me. I had never heard of PQ, positive intelligence, and so it was a super interesting conversation and super interesting topic. You mentioned this idea of creating capacity. When you talk about creating capacity, is this a primary tactic or solution for that, to take things off of your plate and replace those with things that drive energy? Is this a understanding of like thinking about your thoughts and refilling the tank that way? Is it training and mentorship and coaching? Like, what's kind of your primary tactic for when you say, hey, we're going to create more capacity for this individual, or maybe it's yourself? What are some of the steps that you take there?
Mm-hmm. One of the greatest gifts that I've received on my entrepreneurial journey is understanding the power of systems intelligence. And so I had read, and if we put my camera up, like I have read a lot of books, and this is not even half of them. I have listened to all the podcasts. Fix my camera up now. I've listened to all the podcasts. I have gone to the workshops, but I found like nothing was sticking for me. And I would then get hard on myself. Like, why can't I figure this out? Even the habit books. Like I pick up a habit and I'd follow the books and then it would drop off. The element that was missing was that integrative, interconnected approach to doing multiple things that ultimately give me more energy or fuel me, elevate me, evolve me. And Gino's work building EOS and the EOS model and the 90-day world helped me realize that I didn't have the mechanism to continue the work, to sustain it over time. I didn't have that system to continue to move me forward in this practice. And as we know with systems intelligence, even if you think about the Jim Collins flywheel, they generate more and more and more over time, the more we can continue to use the system. So the piece that was missing for me was systems intelligence. I understood what I should do. Frankly, I tried many things, but it didn't click, didn't stick, and didn't stay because I wasn't systemizing it. And then bringing together a handful of rules for myself, for my mind. And we're like, we're not doing that, we're doing this, as well as some habits and then some tools. I was able to create a 90-day world and systemize that. And that's the piece that I feel like we need to recognize, is that our personal practice needs to be easy. It needs to be simple. It needs to be self-sustaining. And the component of the 90-day world and bringing together those tools, rules, and habits was unlocking for me. And I credit a lot of that to the systems intelligence that I learned as an EOS implementer.
That's awesome. As you're doing this and as you're thinking through energy management, and you spoke a little bit earlier about how much can you actually achieve in those 90 days, and that immediately takes me back to the rock buffet. That's one of the common terms. Like, you went to the rock buffet, you took on way too much, and you got done partial of these things. And I think one of the things you said was like, we made progress, but we didn't complete whatever it is that we put in front of us. When you think about priorities, whether those are priorities from an energy management system for ourselves or priorities for the business, let's say it's a 90-day rock, or maybe it's something for you personally. Are there ever opportunities, or are there ever circumstances that exist in which it makes sense to change that? Because one of the things we talk about in EOS is we have a 90-day rock. Come hell or high water, we're going to get this done. We were a hell yes at the beginning of the quarter. Now we're 6 weeks in, and it just doesn't feel right anymore. What is your perspective on like, once you identify whether it's yourself as an individual or something that you're contributing to the company, like priorities, data, other things have shifted, and now change needs to happen. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the number one thing is that we need to know where we're going and why this rock, whether it's personal vision and the rock that you're taking on, or in business, we need to know where we're going, why this is important, why now, and how it helps us get there. And so in the prioritization process, a lot of us as humans, because we're all imperfect, we get caught up. We can't see the time frame between now and the end of the year, or now and 3 years from now. And so we break. A client of mine says raking. We rake that all forward, and we create this rock pile for ourselves now. And so with that, I think it's important to recognize that sometimes we will take on too much, and that's okay. And you better have tried than not to have taken action at all. But when our energy is being pulled in too many divergent ways, what can happen is we try and spread ourselves over too many rocks, and we lose our power of focusing on fewer. And so that's really important to recognize. Less is more. Recognize that certain things are important first, then others, so that prioritization component. But if we find ourselves in the midst of the quarter, and either the path to get where we want is now different, or something else has been revealed as a priority, it's important that we are paying attention, that we're having our weekly level 10, or I have a weekly planning session with myself on the personal side, and we're asking ourselves, does this rock get us where we want to go? If so, how do we move it forward? But if that rock no longer moves us forward, then sometimes you need to offload it to free up more energy and capacity to prioritize what truly is most important and ultimately gets you where you want to go. The component, that I think is really important is a skill that I learned early in my career at KPMG. Those institutions, they put so much time and energy into your soft skill development. I continue to yield from that. And they taught me about professional judgment, being able to do the right thing in given circumstances, uh, that is for the good of the client, for the good of the firm, and it's the right thing to do. You got to be able to read the circumstances and respond appropriately. And they would train us how to do that. So yes, EOS is a powerful framework and all tools and methodologies are, but what we're trying to do here, honestly, is systemize all the predictable elements of the work and running the business all your life so we can humanize the exceptional. That's the Isidore Sharp quote from Four Seasons. So it's just systemizing all the predictability of the business so that we can unlock that human potential. Now, if when we're doing that well, that doesn't mean you have to lock and load on those rocks and complete them, or you either suck or it's been a waste of time. It's actually designed to help us create the capacity to be thinking and solving and connecting and aligning. And if our thinking and our solving and our connecting and aligning reveals that that rock is no longer a priority, then it needs to be offloaded. Now, where does it get offloaded? It can go on the VTO, or you can frankly ask yourself, is it actually an issue or priority or not? And have that honest conversation. Because we all know when everything's important, nothing is important. A lack of focus and disciplined execution will kill the business. So we have to focus on what's most important and make those brave calls. Sometimes you got to kill a rock.
I love that response. You also said something in there about the weekly L10s, but you said you have like your personal planning session on a weekly basis. That's the first time I've heard something like that. What does your personal session look like? What's your agenda? How do you run through one of these?
I was first exposed to the weekly planner tool as part of Strategic Coach. And the problem was that was back when I was trying a lot of things and nothing was sticking. So when I created my own framework, I have a life design, a 90-day driver, a weekly planner, a daily focuser, and a freedom checkup. And so the weekly planning session, it's a one-page tool that I have for myself. I sit with myself typically on a Sunday and I reflect on the week. I make small but important commitments to the week ahead, and it's like a reset. And it allows me to reflect and let go of last week, bring it to closure, and open up myself, my energy field to the week ahead, to what's most important to me. Because by Monday, when I look at my calendar and I have 15 back-to-back 20-minute time slots in my calendar, or I've got to go on a flight and so forth, I often forget that I matter. And I struggle to bring to the top of the pile the things that are important to me, so that once a week reset allows me to put myself to the top of the list. And I use my daily focuser. It's just 5 minutes. I mean, the weekly meeting that I have with myself is like 20 minutes. It's not like a 3-hour episode or anything. That weekly focuser just allows me to click back into my plan and click back into myself and be with myself for 5 minutes once a day. Now, when my life was a little busier and I had, more kids around, I would just sit in my bathroom and do it. Now I have a lot more ease and flow in my life, and I'm able to do it. But in 5 minutes, it can change my day. And in 20 minutes a week, it can change the course of my entire week.
When do you recommend that we do these? Do you do your 5 minutes in the morning? Do you do it at the end of the day for your 20 minutes? Is this a weekend evolution to be able to look back and look forward? What are kind of the optimal days and times for both of these?
I find that I'm feeling most connected to myself in my being, and self-aware in the morning, because I've just spent 7 or 8 hours with myself while I'm sleeping. It also is when I'm not yet receiving a lot of information from the world, and I'm a people pleaser. So I'm not yet, being called to action. Before I've checked my phone, typically in the morning when I've woken up, is when I do my daily focuser. I didn't call it a morning focuser because I think everybody should be free to do that themselves when they choose. Another friend of mine who uses the framework, she does it in the bath at nighttime.
Hmm.
So she collects herself and then she seeds her next day in the bath. The weekly planner, it's typically a Saturday morning now. Now I'm a hockey mom, and so on Sundays, Sunday's a bigger hockey day now. So I take my Saturday morning, and I make a pot of my French press, and I sit with myself. And it's really the tool I use is so simple. It's not meant to be hard or multiple pages, but I'm just guarding that time to be with myself and to think.
Hmm.
Solitude and thinking time is a scarcity for me. I know I'm not the only one because I talk to people all the time, and so buying that time back. I was back to all the way back to the beginning of the session today. I was at the hockey rink yesterday and talking to a parent, and I found myself saying, I need to have more of a buyer mindset
Hmm.
around my time. I need to buy back my time because I sell it and I give it to other people. And I now need to be a buyer of my time. I need to value it. I need to guard it. I need to acquire it and safeguard some of my time for me because my energy bucket needs to be refilled. If I'm going to continue to show up in the world that I want to and have the desire to, I need to know that I recognize that I matter. My friend Bob Schenefeld says he's got a book called I Matter, or Unscatter the Chatter, and then his methodology is I Matter. And the key thing for me there was recognizing, gosh, if I don't matter, nothing matters. And my work with business owners and helping them architect their exit is kind of like bringing together everything that we discussed because I help them recognize in the 100 years of their life, they've lived a certain amount, they've got a certain amount of those free, happy, whole years to live what I call their significant life. And there's not a lot of years left.
Hmm.
Now they can choose to be active and take back control of their circumstances, their life, and affect the change so that they can realize their freedom or not. But with tools and methodologies and guidance, they can. A lot of business owners, they spend a lot of their time like toothpaste when they're running their business. It's not until they're really thinking about their time frame to exit that they start to treat it like a toothpaste tube that's nearly run out. And it's that window that I love working with business owners most because not only are they able to unlock the value in their business, tie it up nicely so it can succession or they can sell it, but they then also have the opportunity to reconnect with themselves, to think about the life that they desire on the other side of their exit, manage their energy, and create a more systemized way of being themselves so that they can enjoy the fruits of all that they've created when they do harvest and succession and transition into what the Snyders call at the Exit Planning Institute their third act. They need to be doing that work now with that toothpaste analogy in mind, because not only is their time and energy finite in their business, but it's also finite in life. And my role as a trusted owner advisor, both on the exit planning advisory as well as EOS, is to help guide them to a successful transition and unlock their freedom to be themselves and to live their life their way. They can have it all. They just don't know how. And when you're struggling to do the basic things like manage your energy, such conversations can feel almost impossible for them to access. So I use very simple tools in my work with business owners to get them clear on who they are, where they're going in life, what this business means to them, and ensure that they are extracting the value in that business so that they can create choices for themselves and then realize their freedom.
Hmm. You talked about energy resource management, and you brought up this notion of buying your time. And one of the things I was thinking about was like, was there buyers and there's sellers, and like sellers of their time are just giving it away freely, and then there's buyers where you're trying to protect and block. When you are in the mode of buying your time, is this a matter of like you flip the switch and now you're saying no to more things? Is this a calendar review in which you're looking at everything that's coming up, saying like, is this the best and highest use of my time and my energy? Like, what does that mean in a practical sense of like, once you go into buyer's mode, like these are the things that I'm now doing?
Yeah. I found myself saying one time that when I say yes to one thing, in that moment, I'm saying no to everything else.
Hmm.
And that got me down to this very binary association with yes and no. So with that in mind, I have now got a lot more clear on my core values, my purpose, where I'm going in my life design. And that helps me be a lot more intentional about my yeses and my nos. I can be selfish enough to say that no, what you're asking for or what you're, proposing I be involved in is not in alignment with my core ideology and my envisioned future. Jim Collins here. So I'm going to respectfully say, I wish you well, but I cannot at this point contribute. And so I'm saying no a lot more and encouraging people to, seek their independence and seek other resources that can help them get where they want to go. Just because I can't doesn't mean they won't get the things that they need. But the worst thing I can do is take on all these yeses and take on all these commitments and tank myself. One Saturday morning, I couldn't get out of bed. And I crawled to my bath and I made an Epsom bath with Himalayan salt, and I just sat in there for 2 hours and I listened to myself around what was going on, and I realized that it was too much, and it was too much of what other people needed and less of what I needed. So when I buy my time, I'm saying no to more things, trusting that those people will find what they need. I'm saying yes to me and my needs a lot more, and saying yes to the things that uplift and fuel me. I am now officially selfish. And the thing about that is that the number one thing we need to protect and prioritize is ourselves. And as a kid, what are we taught? Don't be selfish. Share, give, don't be selfish. And we're taught that as a child, and now we hear as adults, and we're depleted, we're exhausted. And some of us have derailed. I've been there. And the number one thing we need to do is learn self-love, care, and honoring ourselves. We need to learn how to be selfish if we're going to survive and thrive in our lives. So it's flipping that childhood saying around and recognize, if I don't matter, nothing matters. And think about the ish. Ish means a little bit. So if I'm putting myself first a little bit, is that really a bad thing? Does that make me a bad thing? Or does that make me a good role model for my children? Does that allow me to be the best mom that I can be because I'm actually prioritizing my needs? I don't think it makes me a bad person at all.
When you talk to, I think I was probably one of the worst, a people pleaser also, and I would say yes to a lot of things. And what I realized is that I would drop the ball on a lot of those other things. And like, we're talking like simple things of like, hey, barbecue this weekend. Hey, come over to do this. Hey, do you want to start a weekly poker thing? Like whatever the case is, I would say yes to everybody because I didn't want to disappoint. And what I realized is that not only was I getting stretched in other directions, but like I wasn't living up to those commitments that I had made. And so it was almost like, for me, even worse, because not only was I getting the burnout, but I was also letting people down. So it's like, wasn't doing what I was saying I was going to do. And at the same time, just the doing of too many things provided this kind of circular burnout. That kind of takes us to this idea of freedom.
You got it. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good segue to freedom. Yes.
So what is freedom, Renee? Like, why don't we start there? Because I think it's something that we're all chasing. I think it's something in the back of our heads as entrepreneurs that we all want. What does freedom mean to you? And then let's see where this goes.
Yeah. We could talk for days, but we're going to keep it short. After working with so many entrepreneurs, I realized there was a common theme that they all wanted to be free. They started their journey because they had freedom in mind. I want to do what I want, how I want. No one's going to tell me what to do or how to do it. They want to live their life their way. They want to be creative. And that's all well and good. And then we start our journey and we pour ourselves, our heart, our souls into the business. We start saying no to important things for us and our families because we're so invested in this business. But what we forget is this business was designed from the beginning. The intention was for it to give us the life that we want. Now it becomes our life. And the life that we desired at the beginning withers and fades because we're so consumed now in running this business. The business is an energy machine that requires a lot of contribution. And when we're telling ourselves we've got to do it all ourselves or be everything and give so much, then we start to suffer personally. And then a lot of entrepreneurs become enslaved and stuck in their circumstances. I say I was at an event last week. I say it's like, as entrepreneurs, we're house builders. We build this house up around us and we forgot to put a door. We forgot the door. And so we get stuck in these circumstances. I was one of those people, personally and professionally, stuck in my circumstances. Stuck in a marriage that was tied to a family business that we had, and everything was interconnected, and every day was hard. We poured so much energy into running the business, and it frankly didn't get better over time. We went through cancer. We had a young family. I became a stay-at-home mom for a long period of time, and we were hustling hard, and things didn't ease up. We got into a conflict and had to sell our house to buy out a business partner and live with the in-laws. Now, if anybody lived with their in-laws, Europeans at that, it's not easy. And so we're giving and we're not receiving. And I said to him, I feel like this is not adding up. It shouldn't be this way. There should be a giving and receiving in a relationship with this business. And he's like, that's how it is. It's never going to change. And I was convinced otherwise. Implementing EOS was amazing. We got more control, but still we were stuck inside the business, and our marriage and our family was secondary. And then I reached a breaking point. I realized that I didn't want to live out my life this way, and with no sight or no line of sight to change or way out. There was no door. I busted down my own door and burned down the house. And unfortunately, in that double exit, marriage and business, I lost everything. And I nearly broke. The thing I wanted all along was freedom. It was so far removed from me. I didn't even know what it was, but this calling for it was coming from my core. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a process. I didn't have a team. I didn't have anybody. I was an immigrant in a foreign country, and I just needed to be out. I felt to the core that I had to choose myself or I would die in these circumstances. So I backed myself and I busted down the door and I burned the house down. And in that process of falling hard, losing everything, and losing my way for a good couple of years, I had a lot of life interrupting moments and life informing and self-informing moments that I just committed to myself to just keep moving forward. And I learned some tools and some habits and some methods and so forth. And over that time, I felt more like myself than ever. And the more I understood who I was, the more I was able to prioritize myself. And eventually, with this energy management methodology and so forth, I was able to feel more free and expanded. And I found myself saying, I feel free. I am living freedom in my life. Now, is everything perfect? No. I still wasn't living with my kids and still not financially where I, sought to be, but I felt free. And then I got more curious with freedom. Is it a destination? If I have this, then I'll be free. If I achieve that, then I'll be happy. If I do that, then it'll be enough. Or is actually freedom a living experience as opposed to a destination? And then the more I unpacked that and defined what it meant to me, at the core, in the simplest form, I discovered that freedom is choosing self over all else. When we've been raised not to be selfish, that's hard. So then I unpacked it a little bit more and I leaned into different work, including Dan Sullivan's freedoms. And I came up with 5 pillars of freedom for me: the freedom of purpose, freedom of people, freedom of growth, freedom of health, and freedom of wealth. And then I got about defining what each of those meant to me. And I realized this wasn't aspiration. It wasn't an if then. It was a yes now. And everything that I do every day in honoring myself allows me to live in those 5 pillars of freedom by my own design. And what they mean to me is different to what they mean to you, but every day I get to choose the people that I surround myself. I am free to choose them and choose to be around people who uplift me, love me, and accept me as I am. Every day I get to choose to live in my purpose to set people free, which is now my purpose. In my work, in my play, in my personal life, I'm able to have unlocking conversations with people that help move them forward towards their freedom. And then with the freedom of growth, I'm able to learn and expand and evolve myself any which way I want. And I'm able to master my craft and evolve. I'm able to honor my health, my well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally every day. And I know what that looks like. I name it, I act on it. And I'm free to pursue wealth and abundance so that I have sufficiency for what I need and enough to contribute to the world around me. Those pillars of freedom are how I make sure I keep freedom front of mind. I define it, I honor it, and I choose myself every day to live into that freedom. So I don't believe freedom is lost. I believe it's right here. But the number one thing we as entrepreneurs have forgotten is how to manage our energy. And the number one permission that we struggle with most is to choose ourselves. And if we can practice energy management and prioritizing ourselves, we can unlock freedom in anybody who is ready. Curiosity around this work is one thing. Those who take action are people who are ready for change. Not everybody's ready for change. Some people need to go around the Ferris wheel a few times. I did that for more than 40 years. But those who are activated and ready for change, it really comes down to basic and foundational principles that are just long forgotten in the chaos and the busyness of life.
This is one of the topics that came up on our initial call 2 weeks ago, and when you talked about it not being a destination but the actual journey, it just like it spoke to my soul, and that's when I was like, do you want to like manually coordinate coming on the show and we can talk all about this, because I think we forget about that. Like we turn around at a certain point in our lives and we're like, we have all of these different things that we're doing that we said yes to, that aren't providing us energy or are taking away. It's not the best use of our time. And so it just really resonated when you had said, it's about the journey and starting to kind of unlock some of those components. As you think through, the other thing, set people free. Love that, by the way, as your purpose. Like that is huge. What a great focus. When you're doing this, and you're trying to show other people around you, like it is okay to be a little selfish. And there's these 5 pillars. Is that kind of your starting point? Is that the framework for this? Is like, first, let's look at these 5 pillars and then let's define what those pillars mean to each of us personally. Where where is that starting point or that jump off point for this type of exercise?
Yeah. Well, I start with a 100-year map and we do a coloring in exercise. And then we see that white space where we can choose to be free or not. And the only person who knows about that decision and that answer is you. So there's no judgment. You're not reporting this out on a scorecard every week. Um, and then we go into that discovery exercise around what those 5 pillars of freedom mean, not in an aspirational if then, but and now, and in that exercise, we can then have conversation around what's getting in the way of accessing that more now. Is it a mindset? Is it circumstances? Because these are all things that can change.
Mm-hmm.
Back to what we discussed earlier, when we change the way we think, we change the way we behave, and we change the results we get. And so that first exercise is changing the way we think about freedom and realizing it's here. It's here. It's already here. We just forgot how to embrace it, honor it, and welcome it into our lives. And there's something powerful by being able to name it and write it. Energy then starts to organize around it. When you get a red car, you don't see red cars anywhere, and then suddenly you see red cars everywhere. What we focus on expands. And when we take the time to really name and honor ourselves and write that down, we just by nature then give our energy something to focus on. And it helps make the yeses and the nos a lot more informed. And we can say to people, I would love to help you and show up in this way, but that's going to mean that I'm going to need to sacrifice some things that are really important to me. And at this time, I'm going to have to say no. And everybody that I've ever said that to gets it. They're like, good for you. You give so much to the world. You're putting yourself first. And where I was afraid that they might reject me or have negative feelings towards me because I'm being selfish, I realized that I was giving them an example of what that looks like. So we start there. We then do some life design. What we do with the VTO, it's a very similar, not the same, but similar approach. Because we're often caught up in the school year or the business budget year, and we're not looking up and beyond, and we don't really then know how to navigate and orientate ourselves towards where we want to go. So the freedom work then launches into personal visioning that comes down into execution. I say vision plus execution equals freedom. Having vision is one thing, but without the execution, it's wishful thinking. Vision plus execution equals freedom. And when we can bring the vision and then the execution together and keep that freedom front of mind on a daily basis, then we start to find flow. We systemize that in a 90-day world. When I started this work, I want to be clear, I was sitting at the bottom of a hole. I had 2 of my children pulled from my arms. I was homeless. I lost my entire community, and I was alone. I had a wake-up call one Christmas morning and saved the life of a drunk human being who was passed out in -0 conditions. And when the paramedics brought him back to life and sat him up, he had a Vince Lombardi quote on the front of his shirt that said, "It's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up." And I just simply made that decision to get up, to choose myself. At the beginning, it took me 3 hours to get out of bed every day. So I'm not talking from this place of, it's so easy. It's hard. Even thinking about your thoughts is hard. Even 5 minutes in the morning can be hard. It used to take me 3 hours to get out of bed and convince myself that I should get out of bed. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what goals I wanted, but I just got up every day and leaned into my daily habits, my mindset parameters, and I built that capacity over time to embrace these bigger concepts of freedom and life design. So though I prefer to start there with people I meet, sometimes when I meet them where they're at, they just need some support to get up in the morning and prioritize one thing today that matters to them. Sometimes we have to start with the capacity creation first before we can come up to this work. I got here through the foundational, just the basics, you know, couldn't manage my mind. And looking up to this concept of freedom, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that top realm after esteem into self-actualization, where people say that is freedom, it felt like a long way away. It felt impossible to get there, the biggest mountain climb of my life. But the more I got into this daily practice, the more I realized that freedom was already here. It's not that destination.
Hmm.
That destination is where I then get to be an example for other people and guide them and help them. That is my true expansion of myself. But freedom is in my reach every day by simply choosing myself.
When when you start helping somebody, let's say they're a visionary at their company, and what's interesting is when you talk about like being stuck, and I loved your analogy about you build the whole house around you and then you forget to install the damn door, and so there's no way to kind of get out, and you're now trapped. A lot of people are trapped in their business, and is that something that you focus on getting right, once you've concluded with the exercise of this is the 100 years, this is how we're going to take back our life, this is your kind of own VTO, is that when you start turning to things that they are trapped inside of their lives, and then what, where does it go from there?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I say when I meet a trapped or a stuck business owner is that they don't suck. They're just stuck in their circumstances, and their circumstances are designed to yield exactly the results they're getting. The only path to get other results is to change and redesign their way of thinking about their business. In exit planning, we talk about three legs of the stool to live your significant life and to really achieve everything you want as an entrepreneur. You need to have the business goals aligning with your financial goals, aligning with your personal goals. And it's often that personal goals piece that comes last. So my work as a trusted owner advisor is to bring those three legs together. And when I start their journey, we do a discovery of the value of the business holistically, not just financials, but all the embedded, intangible value in the business. We get a range of value. We understand their wealth gap, and we also understand their personal vision. So that all comes up first. So we're kind of getting them out of their life, out of their business, up to this place, and the top of the stool, they can start to see into their world. Then I work with them to help re-engineer their business to maximize the value of it. And I use EOS to do that because EOS is the cleanest, most targeted, proficient, and effective operating system that I have yet to find, that goes into the business, unlocks the human capital, structural capital, social capital, customer capital in the business, and ensure that this business is valuable. It can run without the business owner, and it's transferable to a future owner. So we unlock the value, we get the owner in control, but we get them out of the day-to-day. So we change the way we design the business. And I use EOS because it's just the best that I've found.
Mm-hmm.
On the personal side, we're continuing to engage then family planning into this, financial planning, and making sure they've got the right professionals around them to safeguard their personal interests as well. And I run a 90-day world where both of those two things happen. The EOS work is done either by me or another implementer. I can't do it all. So I use a combination of myself being in the session room as well as then other implementers to go in, drive EOS. So quarter by quarter, we're seeing the value of the business go up and its transferability improve. That's really important to then give the business owner choices around what they, from the lens of their personal circumstances, want for and from the business. We allow them to do that when the business is valuable. So that needs to happen. The personal growth needs to happen. We just run a 90-day world. And every year I revalue the business. We use a platform called Capitalize. So it's like a data room, all the tools and all the documents are in there, and we get it revalued once a year. And I then sit with Peter and I say, Peter, is it time to sell or you want to keep growing? And so we have the grow or sell conversation. They decide that every year. What's most important is they can choose that. They don't default to staying stuck because they don't have a door. I am the door creator, and they then decide whether they wanting to step out or stay in the house of their business. But recognizing that that business is simply a resource, a wealth creating asset, as well as, a heart filling opportunity to create a powerful legacy. But ultimately, logically speaking, it's also a place where you're going to have the opportunity to create intergenerational wealth as well as economic impact. So the need for the business owner to step out of the business and ask themselves what they want is really important. We do all that up front. And then the biggest gift I give them is I hold them accountable to themselves. Because everybody else in that network of advisors that come around the business owner, they want the money for the wealth management, or they're doing the taxes, or they want the commission from selling the business, or all these insurance and so forth. Everybody's transactional here. My work with business owners is to be transformational and help them move and live into the life that they desire, because they matter most. And I'm there to remind them of that.
When you ask that question, or the question that you ask owners of like, is now the right time to sell, or grow, like that in and of itself, just being able to ask and ponder and think and answer that question, like every year it might be to grow because we're having fun. We've got EOS, we're sitting in a visionary seat, like all of these things are happening. But the power of that question, like just the question alone, helps reinforce the idea that you're not stuck. Because I think every year, like if you don't ask that question, you're like, well, I have to continue growing this. I have to do these things. And you may want to do it, but without knowing that there is a door that exists, like you're trapped. So I
Already
love that.
they're free.
Yeah.
Already they're free because they choose. They get to choose. And it's like a whole process of working through the sludge of the business and fixing everything up. And like all I really am doing over the course of the relationship is getting them into a place where they choose. That is already freedom. It doesn't really matter what they choose. The fact that they can choose is important. It starts with value. And so everybody, every coach, business advisor, advisor to business owners needs to understand value, needs to understand what increases business value, what doesn't, because we all need to be making sure that this business is getting more valuable over time and that it can transfer. You would never put your money in a bank account and more over time and never expect that it would increase in value when you pull money out. But we allow business owners to think about their business in that way, and that's not okay. It's a business that needs to be increasing in value, and they at some point need to be able to harvest and pull their money out. And the beautiful thing is when they're running on EOS, that conversation I have with them every year, it's not about whether we should keep the business open or close it down. The business is engineered to run without them. They're not on the accountability chart anymore. The VTO will sustain the business for 10 years and on operating clarity for 3 years. The company's got all the mechanisms in it to run a 90-day world, LMA people, be great employees, follow the process. It's engineered to run without the business owner. It's highly transferable. So they don't have to say, well, I have to stay. The business can't run without me. Or I have to do this because, I can't get my money out. They don't have to do anything anymore. They get to because they choose. And that's freedom.
I'm almost wishing I would have taken us to this like 20 minutes earlier. We should have. This is a good reflection moment for myself. 10 minutes, and then we should have jumped on freedom.
Don't worry, I'll come back
I
because
what
we should not ever, ever, ever stop talking about this. It can take
Yeah.
7 times before somebody's going to listen to you and I and say, "Oh, I think there's something here." And we never know when an entrepreneur is going to say, "I am ready." So we need to keep having the conversation. So I'll come back. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying yes to me. That's